Hello to everyone once again. Thank you and welcome to our masterclass this morning. Could be afternoon to some of you or evening to some of you. I hope that you enjoy this opportunity to have this conversation with us. So this masterclass is a session that we have organized jointly on strengthening national capacities to collect data for monitoring land tenure, security, and governance issues in the Arab region. Is a session or masterclass session that has been organized by a number of organizations, including UN Habitat, the Global Land Tool Network, World Bank, FAO, as well as the Global Land Alliance. And we are very pleased to have this opportunity to really work with you. I'm not sure whether I've mentioned ILC also as one of our organizers of this session. So this opportunity we have today is to really give a reflection about why monitoring of land tenure and governance issues really matter in our work. And we know very well that based on the different efforts and initiatives in terms of land administration, bettering policies that has been discussed throughout the conference, or looking at how best to improve the governance system and making it more responsive to the needs of the communities, to the needs of the government, to the needs of the different constituencies of the people that we work with, is important that we have data and statistics that really supports this work. So as we're working towards building this stronger national institution responsible for land data and statistics, including geospatial information and survey, is key for land administration in the Arab region to really have opportunities or institutions that are able to provide this data, to be able to report on this data and be able to profile what is happening around the region as far as land governance issues are concerned. Having activities of giving data and information that is more useful in terms of sharing the experiences of communities and be able to know who is being left behind, who really enjoys security of tenure, and so forth. We know also very well that there are different opportunities that have recently emerged, be it within the Sustainable Development Goals, that also gives us the opportunities to really reflect about the need for ensuring that we have data and statistics for policy decision around land governance issues. And we know very well that land has been placed in a very unique space in terms of its importance in supporting us achieving Sustainable Development Goal, particularly on goal number 1 around poverty, reducing poverty. Also about food security under goal 2. We also have land in the SDG goal 5, which speaks about women, gender equality and women empowerment, women and girls empowerment. Is an important component of achieving sustainable development goals. We also have land provided for under goal 11 about urban development and ensuring that urban development provides opportunities for housing, provide opportunities for secure spaces, safe, secure spaces, but also looking at land as a core resource for urban development is very important. But we also know, of course, under climate change goal 13, that land may not be adequately featured in that goal, but we know very well that sustainable land use also contributes significantly to climate change. We also have goal 15, which specifically addresses the question of land degradation, and that puts land squarely in view of how better we are able to achieve. If it's well used, well managed, we are able to use the land and be able to achieve land degradation neutrality towards 2030. Goal 16 also is about peaceful societies. For us to live peacefully and taking into account the different challenges we've had so far around conflicts related to land or land disputes can degenerate into civil war, degenerate to civil conflicts that have taken long and has caused serious suffering for communities, especially for women and children. So how does land sit in all this, and where can we be able to strengthen national institution capacity to be able to deliver data and statistics that will be able to give us the best of the data that we need to make policies that are responsive and can strengthen land governance issues and be able to provide needed pointers as far as land governance related aspects are concerned, and we can be able to remain responsive to addressing key challenges that comes with land governance issues. So it is my pleasure as Evelyn, to introduce myself. I'm Evelyn Eresia from UN Habitat at the Global Land Tool Network, and I'll be the main facilitator for this session. At GLTN, I coordinate the Global Land Indicator Initiative and lead our work on gender. So it is a pleasure to also be able to work with colleagues who will be speakers in this session and whom I'll have the chance of introducing them as they come on board. So in the speakers list, the first speaker will be Sydney Gole, who will also introduce herself briefly, maybe say a little bit more when she comes on board. And she's an economist at the World Bank, and she'll be able to share her presentation, mainly featuring what exactly the custodian agencies responsible for land tenure indicators in the SDGs, what the custodians have been able to do, and what exactly the efforts around strengthening national institutional capacity to deliver on data. Then we'll have Ward Ansio from International Land Coalition. Ward is a senior CIRAD researcher seconded at the ILC International Land Coalition, where he leads work on data, research, learning, and knowledge management. Ward will also be able to share with us what the ILC has been doing in developing a tool around data and statistics, and we'll be able to learn more about that shortly. Then thereafter, we'll have Mrs. Shahad Mustafa, who is the Prindex Regional Engagement Coordinator, Middle East and North Africa. And she will be also from the Global Land Alliance, and she'll be able to share with us what the Prindex, the Property Rights Index, tells us about the region and what exactly are the lessons and opportunities to work with governments and the institutions to strengthen the same. Then last but not least, we will have Mr. Sam Biraro, who is an advisor to the Director General and Chief Registrar of Land Titles, Rwanda Land Management and Use Authority in Rwanda, who will also be sharing with us, particularly bringing the local experience or the national experience from Rwanda on what is happening there around land monitoring and how the different initiatives have supported the different efforts that presents the opportunity for us to hear the experiences directly from the country and how the country is managing the dynamics around land data and statistics. So we know very well also that we have the UN Decade for Action, and all of us are called to be able to do more, to be able to deliver, and ensuring that by 2030, data and statistics on land is available and accessible, and we are able to use it for policy decision. So the challenge is for all of us. And I think this is the moment that we hope that this session will present you an opportunity to hear about these experiences from these partners, what has been done globally as far as the monitoring of the Sustainable Development Goals is concerned, but the application of these tools and approaches, not just for the SDGs, but other global commitments, including the VGGTs, including the New Urban Agenda and other regional instruments, including even our national commitments, particularly in the Arab region. So to start, I would ask Sydney Gule from World Bank to take the floor, and she will be able to present, and she has 12 minutes to present her presentation. Thank you and welcome, Sydney.
Thanks so much, Evelyn. Let me share my screen. Are you seeing my presentation?
Yes, very clear. Okay. Please put it on the full view mode so that we can see it correct. That's okay.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Thanks so much for your introduction, Evelyn. It really segues nicely into this first presentation. As you mentioned, my name is Sydney Gourlay. I'm an economist with the World Bank. I work with the Living Standards Measurement Study, which is a household survey program run out of the World Bank, as well as the 50 by 2030 initiative, which is a multi-partner initiative aimed at closing the agricultural data gap by 2030. And I'll kind of come back to that at the end of the presentation. Today I'll be talking about what the custodians have done, so FAO, World Bank, and UN Habitat, along with other stakeholders, in terms of monitoring individual land rights, particularly around SDG 142 and 5A1. Land tenure data and official statistics is especially important. And it's even more important at the individual level. So looking at person-specific rights rather than, say, a household level right. This really allows us to have a better understanding of land rights by gender, by age, or other subpopulations of interest. And as Everlyn mentioned, this has really been reflected in the SDG agenda. And there are two SDG indicators in particular that are looking at individual land tenure rights, and that can be measured well through household survey operations. The first is SDG 5A1, which is the proportion of the total agricultural population with ownership or secure rights over agricultural land, as well as the share of women among owners or rights bearers of agricultural land. The second indicator being 142, which is the proportion of the total adult population with secure tenure rights to land with legally recognized documentation and who perceive their rights to land as secure. And as you can see, both of these indicators are to be disaggregated by sex and by type of tenure. So really that individual level data is necessary for these. Looking at these two indicators, it's very clear that there's a lot of overlap and similarities between these, but there are important differences. Of course, the type of land is really a key difference here, where 142 is looking at any type of any land use. So it could be residential land, agricultural land, etc., where 5A1 is looking explicitly and exclusively at agricultural land, which is related to the difference in populations of interest as well. 5A1 is looking exclusively at the agricultural population, whereas 142 looks at the entire adult population. And finally, and probably most interesting for this audience, is the difference in the span of land tenure rights that are reflected in each indicator. So 142 is looking at the legally recognized documentation, as well as the perceptions of tenure security, while 5A1 looks at more de facto rights, so legal documentation plus alienation rights, for the right to sell or bequeath, for example. Given kind of these similarities in the indicators, and really the need, there's a clear need to harmonize kind of the definitions of the terminology used in these indicators, as well as the tools used to collect the data for monitoring these. So the custodian agencies, which are, the custodian for 5A1 is FAO, sorry, and the UN Habitat and the World Bank are co-custodians for indicator 142. So these agencies have collaborated with GLEE and other stakeholders to really harmonize the definitions and tools for the simultaneous monitoring of these land tenure indicators. So what we've done is we've developed this guidebook that you see here, which includes a survey questionnaire, which collects all of the data necessary for monitoring indicator 142 and 5A1. We recently released the book in Arabic. It's also available in English, Spanish, Russian, and French. So we're really trying to make it as widely available as possible. It's also available in the World Bank's CAPI platform, Survey Solutions, for survey practitioners that are going to the field. So the guidebook itself is written on how to collect the necessary data. So it walks you through the steps necessary and the questionnaire instrument, which I should say up front, the questionnaire, it's designed to be integrated into a different kind of a larger survey operation. So rather than a specific survey aimed at measuring only these two indicators, it's rather a pretty precise questionnaire module that we've designed to be able to drop into other questionnaire tools, like a living standard survey, labor force survey, etc. So in trying to keep the questionnaire short, but we need to also cover all of the different facets of land tenure that are measured, that are included in these SDGs. So we look at, there's 3 different facets of land tenure that are covered. One is documentation. So we're looking at is the individual's name on a legally recognized document. So again, with the emphasis on an individual person, we go beyond asking, does the household have a document, right? We want to know, does this particular person have their name on a document? The second facet is alienation rights. So does this person have the right to sell or right to bequeath this land, the land that they own or use? And that may be either a right they have alone, or they have the right to do so with another party. And finally, perception of tenure security. This one is really important because it's not always the case that legal rights and perception of tenure security go hand in hand. So here we ask, regardless of the legal rights, how secure does an individual feel his or her rights are? In some contexts, it may be that having a legally recognized document does not necessarily translate into secure rights or the perception of secure rights, but it may also be the other way around, depending on the customs and norms of a certain context. That legally recognized documentation isn't necessarily utilized or necessary to have a perception of secure rights. So all three of these are captured in the questionnaire module. And we also designed the questionnaire with a few different variants because, as I mentioned, this tool is to be integrated into existing surveys. We've provided a number of different options to be able to fit different types of surveys. So there are two key design options that we've considered. The first is the respondent approach. So whether individuals will be interviewed only about their own rights, or if they'll be asked about their own rights plus other members of the household, which we call the proxy respondent approach. Of course, there are data quality advantages to using the self-respondent or asking only about someone's own rights. But we do recognize that many survey programs use the proxy respondent approach. So we provide a questionnaire for each of these scenarios. There's also the decision around the level of data collection. So whether you're going to ask about each piece of land separately, the rights of each parcel of land, or if you just ask about land rights in aggregate. Of course, we promote greater disaggregation, so asking about each parcel of land separately, but we do recognize that's not always feasible. In terms of capacity building and scale up, which is really kind of the important part here, is in order to increase the use of this tool, the custodian agencies have held several capacity building workshops with the aim to, of course, develop capacity, but also really encourage country ownership among statistical systems to really solidify the sustainability of land tenure data. For example, FAO worked with the Arab Women Organization in November last year to host the Gender Statistics in the Field of Agriculture event, where discussion around 5A1 was one of the focuses. There's also several engagements going on with national statistical partners in the region. For example, FAO and UN Habitat are working with or are planning work with Tunisia and Iraq on the topic of land tenure. And finally, I want to kind of present the 50 by 30 initiative as a good opportunity for scale up of data collection around land tenure. So I kind of alluded in the beginning, but the 50 by 30 initiative is a partnership for data smart agriculture. So the aim is to strengthen national agricultural data systems in 50 low and lower middle income countries by 2030. So of these 50 countries, the target is to have 30 countries from Africa and the Middle East. And this initiative only started in 2019, so really it's getting off the ground. And not all 50 countries have been decided. This is kind of on a rolling basis. So there is scope for increased participation in the region. I just wanted to highlight how the 50 by 30 is addressing land tenure data, and that's through two primary channels, one of which is through methodological validation, so of this joint tool. We've completed a study in Armenia where we're really testing the questionnaire that's been developed, and we're planning to do one or two more studies in different contexts. And really that will lead to increased scale up of data collection. So already in the 50 by 2030 reference questionnaires, which are kind of the baseline instrument, we have integrated the questions necessary for monitoring 142 and 5A1. So these two things, coupled with the initiative's focus on country ownership and capacity building, and of course the geographic scope of the initiative, it really leads to a very good opportunity for scale up globally, but also in the region in particular. And I know I'm running out of time. I just wanted to kind of wrap up with some key takeaways, which the most important one being that really at the moment, there's very limited data on individual land tenure rights in official statistics. To date, no country in the Arab region has reported on 5A1, for example. But we do have the tools available. And now I think we as stakeholders and countries really need to focus on scale up through promoting the importance of land tenure data. Without recognition of the importance, there won't be motivation to actually go the extra mile to collect the data. Really, we need to increase capacity development efforts, particularly with national statistical agencies and relevant ministries. And then finally, really try to leverage existing survey efforts to collect this data in a really cost-effective way, and not thinking about this as the need for a land tenure specific operation. There are much more cost-effective ways to do that. Okay, I've gone over time, so I'll turn it over to Evelyn. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Sydney, for the presentation. Thanks also for keeping time, though slightly above the allocated time. And I hope my other panelists will be able to keep time as well. But that was very useful. I think just underscoring the fact that the global methodology for monitoring SDG land-related data is not just developed by the custodians themselves, but it's a major process that had to take place, working with the National Statistical Organization, working with land administration entities, working with the civil society organization, the private sector entities. All the discussion went behind the development of this methodology that Sydney has referred to, and is normally and required by the SDG framework to have it approved through the IAG Interagency Expert Group on SDGs for its global approval and use. So we are very pleased that this has happened, and we already have this methodology available. And I think because of the similarity between the indicator 1.4.2 and the 5A1, the custodians agencies found it fit to consider really bringing these methodologies together and to optimize opportunities and making it more efficient for countries to collect and report on the two indicators jointly. I think now I'll move straight to Ward from International Land Coalition, who will also share with us what they have been doing and how this applies to the monitoring of land governance issues. Over to you, Ward.
Thank you, Evelyn. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon for those in other regions. I'll start by sharing my screen. Do you see it?
Yeah, it's already visible. Please put it on the full view. Yes, that's fine now.
It should be. Perfect. Thank you. Well, in addition and in complement to what Sydney presented, I will present another tool entitled Landex that is complementing, that is adding to the two, or we often speak to 3 SDGs that have been presented. I speak about 3 SDGs because we also tend to add 5A2, which is more of a practice indicator to the legal 5A1. So this tool is Landex. It's developed by the International Land Coalition. And I'll make it very short to give you a broad overview in 4 minutes what Landex is, to show you a bit what Landex can provide the projects and what is needed, so the infrastructure that you can use to report on land governance. And then I'll open it up with a couple of questions and reflections to the room, which might be discussed now or might be discussed afterwards in the Q&A session. So very quickly, what is Landex? So we define Landex as the global land governance index that puts people at the center of land data and which democratizes land monitoring and builds a data ecosystem where all voices can be heard. And I'll come back to each of these points. It does so by promoting the use of a common set of indicators. And as you will see, we have identified about 33 indicators. It supports efforts to gather data according to these indicators. So it is a tool, but we also support gathering data according to these indicators that feeds this tool. It provides globally comparable data on fundamental issues of land governance, and it builds an ecosystem of data with priority given to people-centered data and priority given to underrepresented issues regarding land. The objectives of Landex is to contribute and to go beyond the SDGs and to other global frameworks. Evelyn mentioned the VGTs is another one. So we don't want to position us in competition at all. We position us in complement, to contribute, to add to these existing frameworks already. How do we do that? Two ways: by broadening the scope of the monitoring. As Sydney presented, she presented 2 indicators. As I said, often we speak about 3 land indicators. Well, Landex broadened the scope by identifying 33 indicators. So it's allowing us to better cover, to better monitor the complexity of land issues. Sydney spoke a lot about monitoring individual land tenure. We, for example, broaden the scope and we add as well collective land rights. Or we add other aspects that are very important and very much related to land tenure. For example, ecosystems management, or the management of the rights, or the decision-making processes to these land rights. Another aspects we cover are, for example, harassment of land rights defenders, which is a very important issue in many countries in the world. A second way of opening the scope is about the data sources. In the first presentation, again, the main entry point is, not the main, but one of the main entry points is legalized information. We have also perception and other types of data, household data as well. But here in Landex, we tend to open up and develop an ecosystem gathering all type of data sources that can respond to these particular indicators with a particular methodology, and I'll come back to that. To do that, to open these 2 scopes, either in what we measure and how we measure, we draw on existing initiatives. So Landex does not want to reinvent the wheel, but take stock of the wealth of information and the wealth of data sources that are out there regarding land. These initiatives and these databases are often scattered, and what Landex tries to do is to centralize them, to make sense of them, to check the quality according to the indicators identified. So we do that through development of an ecosystem by promoting a diversity of data sources, which can be, of course, the national statistical offices, which is a very important one, government and the line ministries, but also research institutions, civil society data, people-centered data, or citizen-led data, you name it. For us, every piece of information is potentially a piece of information that can contribute to the monitoring of land governance. It provides us such alternative, but also complementary sources. It's about including rather than excluding, allowing us to make everybody's voice heard, but also allowing us to make everybody's situation, land situation, seen I mean by that collective land rights and others. So it's making the invisible visible and making all voices heard. So as I said, we've identified 33 indicators through a consultative process that took about 18 months at various levels. We've done consultations at global level, at regional level, including country level. And based on that, bringing together all these initiatives, 33 indicators were retained. 33 indicators at 3 levels. The first level, the yellow one or the A1, is a legal level. These are all indicators concerning legal aspects of land governance. So is a certain right, land right, included or respected in your constitutions or in your law? Secondly, the B level, the light gray level, is the implementation level. So if it is recognized in the law and your constitution, is it effectively being implemented? Is there budget for it? Is there acts for it? Is there decrees for it, etc., etc.? And then a third level, and that's a very important one. There's the C level, the outcome, result, and impact level, where we effectively measure the impact of these laws that might be implemented. We measure it on the ground. So what is the impact of this law for your population, or for your land rights, or for your women land rights? These 3 levels of monitoring cover 10 thematics, from 1 to 10, the top bar. So we cover secure tenure rights, family farming, diverse tenure rights, land rights for women, land rights for indigenous peoples and local communities, locally managed ecosystems, the decision-making and governance aspects of these land rights, transparent and accessible information, effective actions to land grabbing, and also protection of land rights, land right defenders. These are 33. These are our core indicators, but we allow also for flexibility and for country specificity. So if in a country this is implemented, of course, these countries or these actors that are implementing it can add variables that are of importance for their country or for their situation. All these 3 indicators are implemented through 4 types of methodologies. I won't go into detail because I don't have time, but the first one is a people-centered or an expert-centered, where it's based on questionnaires, surveys that are online. I'll come back to that. There's NSO and what we call calculation indicators, where we use existing data from NSOs or from global databases as the ones presented by Sydney. Then there's what we call global initiative indicators. That's indicators with whom we partner, or initiatives with whom we partner, like Prindex, which will be presented just after that, where we use their data to feed our indicators. And then lastly, the last methodology is a crowdsourced one, where we use online tools, especially to monitor harassment and murders of land rights defenders. So what does it bring us to? It brings us it allows us to develop an online platform, which is a screenshot here, which is, I'll give you the email, the internet address afterwards. It's landexglobal.org. That gives us, first of all, an index. Here at this stage, our global index for all the data we have stands on 51. So this is according to all these indicators where we start. Why do we develop a global one? Is to see how globally the evolution on commitment to improve land rights is evolving. But of course, this can then be disaggregated at national level, very same exercise, where here we have Colombia, Nepal, and Senegal. Unfortunately, we do not have full databases yet for the Arab states, but we are working on it. We have launched recently Jordan, for example, and we will be working in the region more intensively because of the initiatives like this one, but also because of ILC's Global Land Forum that will take place in March 2022. It can then be disaggregated in thematic at global or thematic at national level, where we see, well, this country is doing well on family farming, for example, or on tenuity of secure tenuity, but is not doing well in recognizing the land rights of indigenous peoples, for example. And then we can also go into the 33 indicators. And this, we think, is a very powerful tool, not only for planning policies, but also for monitoring precise and specific policies regarding land. Here, for example, for Colombia, we can see that at a legal level, Colombia is doing quite well. So land rights is well respected and present in their constitutions and laws. But when we go to the implementation and then the impact level, there's a lot of issues there still because of you can see the orange and reddish colors there. And important here is we can even disaggregate according to actors, according to respondents, according to type of tenures, so collective tenure, individual tenure, leasehold, etc., etc. So, for example, here we can disaggregate, what do women think about the respect of women's land rights in their constitution, or the implementation of women's land rights in the constitution. So we can even disaggregate the analysis according to gender or according to actor. What does government say? What does civil society say about certain aspects? One of the important tools that we just have launched this week is an SDG reporting. This is the one for Nepal, where we use the data to respond to a certain number, 16 to be precise, 11 to 17 to be precise, SDGs indicators, because we didn't reinvent the wheel and we aligned the exercise to existing indicators and existing initiatives. Of course, the end product, that is Landex, is very much aligned with all these initiatives. That makes it easy to share information from one initiative like Prindex to feed Landex, or for Landex, if there's additional information, to share it with another initiative. But that makes it also enables Landex to cover other initiatives like monitoring the SDGs, monitoring the VGTs, contributing to GLI and MELA, which is the monitoring instrument of the African Union. And so Landex is related to 17 SDGs, not only the 2 or 3 core land SDGs, but also numerous other SDGs like SDG 16 on human rights and many others. And by implementing Landex, automatically then you can also provide complementary reports on the SDGs. You can start monitoring implementation of the VGTs, etc., etc. What is the infrastructure? So it's an open data website. It is landexglobal.org.
Kindly finalize, please.
30 seconds, Evelyn. It's a totally open database. The use is for all, and the contributions is for all. Everybody can contribute. If you want your situation to be visible, if you want to make your voice heard, contribute to the data. It's for all countries, and there is available data at a global level, but probably not yet complete. There's about 30 countries where we're going to a complete database this year. So it's useful and it's accessible to all. It is online. We can also do it on paper. If you contact us, we can provide you that. So to give you, to finish my presentation, to open up the discussion with you, is such a tool, Landex, that opens the scope of sources and aspects to be monitored relevant to you. How would you use it? Is it by contributing? Is it by valorizing? Is it by using the data? I would like to hear from you. Thank you, Evelyn. I'm sorry to be a bit long.
Thank you, Ward. That was precise, and I think the participants have kindly mute yourself if you're not speaking to avoid the echo. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I appreciate your presentation. You've really highlighted the areas that are highly complementary noting that the SDGs and the indicators we have for monitoring land tenure and governance issues are not necessarily sufficient, and this presents an opportunity to do more. The role of the civil society organization and other entities, including the researcher, including other entities in contributing data that is also useful and can be complementary, in this case, working directly also with the government to be able to have data for policy decisions. Not to belabor the points, and I know the participants kindly share with us your questions. There are questions that Ward has mentioned, and he would also like to hear your reflection, as well as on the first presentation by Sydney. Please keep them coming via the chat to that after the presenters. So Allah, who is the Shahad Mustafa. Shahad is the Brindex Regional coordinator in the Middle East for the Global. What exactly the property right in from that. Shahad, over to you.
Thank you very much, Evelyn. Before I start, I would like to thank the organizers, the Egyptian government for hosting this conference and bringing us all together virtually and in person. And also thanks to you, Evelyn, for facilitating this session and taking the lead on it. I'm trying to share my screen now. I'm not sure if you can see it. Okay, so before
you can put it on the full view mode so that we can see it clearly.
Yes. So before I start, I would like to highlight that Brindex have published a paper within the context of the Arab Land Conference. It's available in the e-library of the conference, as well as on our website, brindex.net. So what is Brindex? Brindex is the property right index. It's a land monitoring tool. It's a joint initiative of Overseas Development Institute and the Global Land Alliance that aims at measuring the perception of property and land rights. But why are we measuring the perception? Well, the perception data matters to us because the perceptions drive the behavior. Once the human being feels secure in their environment, in their home, they will start to invest in their capacity development, in the enhancement of their livelihood. And this is a vital point for the region. Perceptions also provide us with an indicators from the demand side, from the citizens, instead of data provided from the administrative side, and in this situation from land registries. These perceptions will help us identify the most vulnerable groups and helping us understanding the reasons why they are reporting their insecurity. Allowing by us comparing the different policy approaches within one country and between different countries over the time. So why do we measure these perceptions, and what is the objective of Brindex from collecting these data on perceptions? Brindex want to develop a national representative data set that is globally comparative. It's open access to all, using an approach and methodology that can be adapted and used in different contexts, countries, targeting different groups. So to meet the challenges in the Arab region through our data, we have identified what the Arab region is facing at the moment. They face the lack of information related to land, and especially perception when it comes to security of land tenure. They lack documentation and statistics about land-related issues. There is also the obstructed implementation of law and a big reliance on traditions and social norms, which was being spoken more about in the past 2 days, and they are reflected especially in the women accessibility to land. We have limited access of women and youth. We have a limited policy revision and limited impact evaluation of such policies in reality. The Arab region have also the challenge of refugees due to the multiple conflicts in the last few years, as well as the problem of foreign workers, especially in GCC countries. So how Prindex can help to achieve with the data they are providing? Prindex data can help in the change of design of the national policies. It can also help monitor the land governance through the perception of data. It can also help to monitor the impact of the policies and how successful they are, and also contribute to tracking SDGs and VGGT among other development indicators. And therefore, Prindex have used and developed a methodology based on the tenure security metric question that takes the horizon of 5 years and asks in the next 5 years, how likely or unlikely is it that you could lose the right to use the property or part of it against your will. This methodology have been implemented in 140 countries, covering by that almost 96% of the global population or the adult population, taking into consideration age, gender, urban, rural, among other factors. And the data were collected between 2018 and 19, just before the pandemic. So with this methodology, we have collected data in 13 Arab countries. The findings and the results were shocking because more than 1 in 4 adults feel insecure about land and property in the Arab region. As you might see in the map here of the Arab region, showing the surveyed countries with the light colors showing those who are relatively low insecure about their tenure rights, to the darker colors where we have high insecurity of tenure. We do hope that we can add Sudan to our map in partnership with Istidana. Also, our data showed us some key findings that identified the key vulnerable groups in the Arab region, such as the youth and the working force. The figure here presents us the most vulnerable age group in the Arab region, which is the group of 26 to 45 years old. And it shows us also that the highly insecurity is among those who resides in GCC countries. The data also showed us that the renters are the most insecure in the region. We have here a graph that shows the percentage of insecurity between renters and owners. Sometimes renters are 10 times more insecure than the owners. And as you might see, the gap is very big in between, where the purple color presents the renters and the orange presents the owners. And the high gap can be clearly seen in Lebanon and Egypt. Well, of course, we cannot leave the gender disparities in the region, and especially the perception of tenure insecurity in the event of death of a spouse. As you might see, we have tried to gather and categorize the data that they are representative for male and female for each country, and the dots present the insecurity of each of the group, with the lines presenting the gap between these two groups. And this big gap can be clearly seen in Morocco, Egypt, and Jordan. And this highlights once more the deprivation of women from their inheritance rights in the Arab region. So we also focused on the documentation and if they actually matter in the region or not. And we can see the difference in the perception in this graph, the perception of security between those with no documentation and those with named documentation. And as you can see, the gap is very big with a few outliers like Saudi Arabia, where the perception of tenure security between those with no documentation and with documentation is relatively close. Then we have asked these vulnerable groups, what are the reasons of feeling insecure? Well, the renters have always answered that the owner or renter might be asking to leave, or they lack financial support. And we also have within the reasons a disagreement with a family or relative, or death of a household member as a reason of their insecurity of tenure within the next 5 years. I'm duplicating this slide because I want to highlight once more what can we achieve with this data, with these key findings. We want to change the design of national policy. We want to monitor land governance, and with the focus and shedding the light on where the change is needed, because it will not help anyone if we're going to change the land policy for ownership and leaving renters as usual out of the frame. These data would also help monitor the impact of such policies, will contribute to tracking sustainable development goals, which Sydney have clearly explained at the beginning. And here our focus on the section where perceptions are needed to reporting on these goals, as well as VGGT and other indicators. I would also like to highlight here that Prindex data have been used by UK and USA to report on Sustainable Development Goals 142 and 5A1. So what are our next steps and what can we do with these data that are collected? We are calling for everyone to start making cross-country comparisons, to start making some deep dives to understand more why do we have these perceptions of insecurity. And we are also welcoming a regional partnership and outreach. We also want to highlight that identifying these groups require us to make more thematic research, especially in fragility, conflict, and violence zones regarding youth issues, gender analysis about women accessibility to land, about the customary tenure in the region, and also about the financial issues that were the reason many times in reporting insecurity. Thank you all for being here today. And once more, the raw data and the data collected from the Arab region, along with the report about the Arab countries, is available on Prindex website. Thank you, and back to you, Everlyn.
Thank you, Shahad, for the presentation. Certainly, the Prindex data provides one of the data sets that really can help countries and civil society and any other actors spark conversation and dialogue around different aspects of their land governance, focusing on the perception of tenure security. As you rightly observe, the tenure security indicator 1.4.2 has provided also, or underscore actually, the part on perception of tenure security, and it is the discussion that we had over the Global Land Indicator Initiative and the partnership that really emanated the whole, or really gave birth to the concept of perception of tenure security. And we are happy that Prindex is running with this to be able to undertake this as a global poll, through a global poll methodology, to be able to provide this data at scale. As we rightly observe also, is how does also this presents an opportunity in terms of strengthening national institutional capacities to be able to deliver this data and enable the monitoring and the use of this data for policy decision. So I would like to pass directly to the next and the final panelist, presenter, who is Sam Biraro. Sam Biraro works with, is an advisor to the Director General and the Chief Registrar of Land Titles in Rwanda at the Rwanda Land Management and Use Authority, and will be able to share with us the experiences of Rwanda and bring us closer to the realities of what is happening there. I also want to underscore, and what Sydney had mentioned earlier, that GLTN and UN Habitat, in collaboration with FAO, also has been able to work with in a number, or is currently working and exploring partnership in a number of Arab countries, particularly in our effort to strengthen the institutional capacity to deliver on Indicator 1.4.2 and 5A1, which have been made reference to. And Rwanda is one of the countries that we've also had the opportunity to partner with the land authority there to be able to explore this potential area. And this with the aim of both getting the administrative data through the registries and cadastre system, but also the perception of tenure security. So to this extent, I hand over to you, Sam, for your reflection. Over to you.
Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you for inviting us, and I would like to appreciate the invitation and the team that is going to participate in this session.
Would you like to have us say, not yet, would you also put your video on, and maybe you can share your screen and we can see it, if you could kindly do that.
Okay.
Now we can see you. Please share your screen.
Okay.
Not yet. We can only see your desk, the file. So maybe you need to click on the right file so that it pops up.
Okay.
You have to open the files, the particular file first, and then you do the sharing.
Okay.
Yes, we can see it now. You can put it on the full view mode.
Okay. Are you able to see it now?
Super.
Okay.
Yes, very
Thank you so
clearly,
much.
sir. Please proceed.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much, Evelyn. So my presentation will just highlight the Rwanda context, just focus on land tenure security. Also, it will focus on institutional framework, the system that we have in the land registry, the benefits of land tenure security in Rwanda, how land tenure contributed to SDG indicators, the national commitments that was set in order to avail the data on SDG indicators. Also, the last outline, we focus on the collaboration between the Rwanda and UN Habitat. Yes, the introduction will just highlight the reason as to why the land tenure was important in Rwanda. As you know, Rwanda has an issue of genocide in 1994, where everything was distracted, and the challenges came immediately after the genocide. But some issues also were highlighted related to the size of the country is too small. The number of population is it was high. some issues related to land conflicts raised from, by that time it was around 36%. Now it reduced to 3%. Also, the lack of reliable land registration system to grant the land tenure. Also, there was poor coordination of various institutions. Rwanda, the government of Rwanda has recognized land as a priority to the development of the economy as well as poverty reduction. Immediately in 2003, Rwanda initiated and approved the new constitution that granted the landowner, the citizen to have the land ownership. Then followed by the land policy of 2004, where it was giving the rights to all people, and followed the institution was established in 2006, where the systematic roadmap to register land was approved, where the government engaged different partners, including the World Bank and Netherlands and other civil society, in order to register the land, in order to have a good land governance that aiming to strengthen land administration and increase land security, transparency, and efficient rules and the growth of the economy, and so that the country can have a full and stable services related to different functions that are used in land administration, like having land value, land use, and other land development that can help the country to improve its development. So since 2010, so to date, we have registered over 11.45 million parcels, and whereby 8.8 parcels were registered and issued to the owners. In addition to that, we have established the land registry called the Land Administration Information System, which was developed aiming to collect all land-related records. Also, generate the statistical data, including SDGs indicators, not limited to those two only, but including the land use planning, the land market, the land values. So this was established in 2012. Now it holds over 11.5 million parcels. Then how, after registering those the land, the past 11 million parcels, we can see now we have clear the benefits that was gained from landowners. Before, there was no right between the full rights on land, on properties generally, especially in Rwanda, where people, the land was belonging to men instead of women. So nowadays, because of the law, the policies, and the strategies, equal rights. So each document has to appear with 50% equal sharing, both men and women. So also there was a good decision making, because if they want to sell or buy land, they have to consult each other and decide whether they go to buy or not. So there's good decision making and the security of at household level. Also, having full rights on land, having a land title that guarantee them to access to finance local rental securities. So we have a big number now have engaged banks, getting the loans in order to develop their own investments. It acts as a source of investment towards leading to poverty reduction. Also, it helps in land use planning, efficient land use planning, which includes and impact in our land production. Also, we have institutionalized, we have a institutional framework from the Ministry of Environment. We have the institution. We have 5 provinces. Each province has a registrar. We have a district. Each district has an office that helps to deliver the good services on time that we provide. Also at local level, we have the sectors. The sectors, so we have the sector managers on each district who act as land notaries If you want to buy or sell land, you have to consult the software manager at the local level without having a long distance to going to the services. We have also the private owned operators that help us in land surveying, land valuation. If you want to have the value of your land, you have to consult the private notaries. And also the land surveyors if you want to subdivide your land or merge the land. As I said, you have established the land administration information system. We call it LAIS. So this is a big tool in Rwanda that helps us to have a good record. Also, it helps the citizen to have the good record and even system, the security of the data. This system holds the both textual and spatial and non-spatial data, so that if you want to subdivide your land, you have to check the data. If you want to pay tax, you have to check in the system the size of the land, the coordinates, the boundaries. If you want to check the parcels before buying it, there's no dispute or any caveat in the system, you have to check before buying it. This is the picture of the system that you have. It shows the district, up to the local level, the owner, the shares. So it gives you all details in order to, if you want to print another title, or if you want to get another, to change the name, if you want to do any transaction, we use this system. So in terms of generating statistical data, you run a query on each type of the system of the data. So it holds different types of tenure. We have the freehold titles, we have the lease, emphyteutic lease, we have also the condominium. This is one of the title that we issued the citizen during the land registration. And to date, if you want to do any transaction, you just do it sporadically. You go to the sector manager, you submit, they give you a notification, then to go to the district, then the registrar will approve online. So we are no longer using the hard copies, we are using the online documents, given the situation we have nowadays of COVID pandemic. So we are no longer using hard copies, like we are using digital stamp QR code. This is one of the samples that I selected in order to show the contract that you have in Rwanda we use. So this is just a demo that when we're issuing the land title, we have to gather the population so that we give them some explanation, the awareness campaign that we provided before having the issuing the land title. This is the process if you want to register your land. This is we have the field sheets. We use the maps, the auto photos. So we use the maps in order to register. We spread to the maps. Then we have to mobilize the people. There's also demarcation and education. We just create a parcel. We use what we call UPI, unique parcel identifier. After creating the unique parcel identifier, we process the data entry. Then they approve it. After approving it, print the land type, then we issue the owner. This is the whole process that we use. This is done, we have the client charter, depending on type of transaction. The longest type of transaction, it takes 30 days, but minimum takes 1 day. For the land meant for commercial and the industrial, that is the land title, you apply within 1 day, you get your document. Then how the system is connected to other users. I can start maybe the land registry is connected to Irembo. Irembo, it's a platform that was set by the government of Rwanda in order to have to use the e-payment. If you want to apply, you apply using the mobile application. It's a platform. You go and apply online. They give you a message. Then the Irembo will just send a document. You forward the document, informing that you have cleared, don't have taxes, the full name are okay. So then you pay online. Then the officer will notify whether this document is okay. Then they will process the document. We have also connected to the land use plan, the maps, I mean the National Land Use Master Plan. We have to check whether this land is complying with the planned land use. If it's agricultural, residential, or commercial, then just approve it before doing any transaction. So we have connected to agricultural land. So in order to know we have the policy of land consolidation. So it's it's not allowed to subdivide land with less than 2 hectares. So we have to check whether that land made for agriculture is complying with that size. So we also, the system is connected on this construction permit. If you want to issue a construction permit, you have to check whether the system, the information the lies is complying with the standards that are allowed and zoning legislation for construction. So we have also connected on the court cases. So the judicial and the Ministry of Justice on court cases. If you want to check the properties, they have to consult the system. We have the online application. If you want to check your land, so you check by using your mobile application. It's *651. So then you check on the data if you have a mortgage or not. If you want to buy a property, you have to check using your mobile application. So the system also connected to the land taxation. Our land authority, our revenue authority have to check if the size of the land is complying with the standard prices that is about to be charged. Then the system also connected to
Sam, you could finalize within the next 4 minutes or so.
Okay.
Would appreciate.
Thank you. So the mortgage is checked, it's connected to all financial commercial services to check whether if you want to mortgage, then you have to consult the system. So in terms of having an open data, we have developed a national land database that we can check. It's on, if you want to check, use this address. This is an open platform that is on our website. You can check the registered parcel, women, men, and other categories. Then we have the National Land Use Master Plan. If you want to check, you put into your PI, then you check the type of the land is before buying your land. So we use different tools in order to have accurate survey data in terms of boundaries. We have the what we call calls. It is continuous reference station. We have stations in order to have accuracy of the data. So in terms of contributing to SDGs, so the data, the system I have shared, or you can able to see the number of land titles that are owned by men, by women, by jointly men and women, and other categories like the churches and other state-owned entities. Also on indicator, this is related to indicator 1.42, indicator 5A1, also proportion on agricultural land. Also, we can able to get some information on agricultural land. As you can see, we can have 22% on women, 12% men, 56% on agriculture, jointly men and women. Another category like the churches, they own 10%. In terms of national commitment, together with the institution of lands in Rwanda, there was a negotiation of the new structure of the national statistics. They created a special unit responsible for environmental statistics. They will be responsible on reporting SDGs indicators. Also reporting on global commitments like the national determined contribution on NDCs. Also, there's natural capital accounting that is done by World Bank. Also, the climate change and the mitigation measures. So that unit will be responsible reporting having regular reports. Also, we have developed result-based management that will track those indicators. Also, the commitment that we made, our sector strategic plan, you have included those indicators related to SDGs. We have signed an MOU with the Statistics Office so that every year they'll be informing us and share the indicators that we want to work on, including SDG indicators. The collaboration we made between the UN Habitat as custodian agency, we have signed appointed the focal person from the Statistics Office, from Land Office, and the Ministry of Agriculture report on those two indicators. There's also ongoing study aiming on enhancing National Statistics Office capacity to collect land tenure security. We have an ongoing study that is assessing the available data from our system, also the proposal how the remaining data will be collected. There was also we received the capacity building from UN Habitat and FAO, from the participated and the participants were involved, our management, including the directors, the Statistics Office, the Ministry of Environment, and Ministry of Agriculture. So this training was conducted in December 2020. Thank you so much, and that was my presentation. So we'll be happy to receive your comments and suggestions of the same. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sam, for that great presentation and for sharing your experiences in Rwanda. Unfortunately, we don't have a specific experience. Probably we didn't have an opportunity to bring on board our colleagues from Tunisia who are doing the same as what Sam you've shared. The country team also in Kenya, working with the Ministry of Land and the National Statistics Office there. We hope that we can be able to do the same with a country, the Iraq country in Arab states. We also hope that we can, our partners, particularly Rashid from Jordan, also leading a similar effort and exploring opportunity to do the same. So I think I want to appreciate, because what you have called Sam is the opportunity to leadership in terms of data collection and reporting. And I appreciate that as, you know, a chart. I think importantly, when it's speaking about institutional strengthening, is also not just generating data that is used only in the boardrooms, but there is, you know, a significant ownership by the communities, and the communities are able to find value, you know, in the use of that data in making decisions or policy decisions that impact their lives. And I think in this case, particularly in land tenure regularization process in Rwanda, this was very evident in view of the data and information that has been shared. And we are pleased that Rwanda has accepted to partner with us also to explore opportunities to report on indicator 1.4.2, as well as the 5A1. As Ward had mentioned earlier, we have also an indicator of 5A2 that looks at the extent to which the legal frameworks, including customary laws, are progressive enough in securing tenure rights for women and girls. That's an important aspect that we have not necessarily focused on in this session, but I think for your information as participants also interested to understand the dynamics, particularly in the provisions of land tenure related indicators in the SDGs, that is equally very important. So we've asked you to share questions on the chat. I know some have already been responded to, and I think this is the moment also to get a feel of what exactly are your questions, your reflections about this session towards the end of our masterclass. So I would like to see whether there are hands that would go up to put the question directly to specific speakers, and where you can put up your hand. But if asked, I saw the question one directed to Shahad. If you would want to make a quick reflection about that for the benefit of all the participants. One question asking about sharing about the methodology you applied in, but also maybe generally on the view of the, also you had a question to you about this being a more a tool to collect the data, and how will you validate that? If you also would like to share your thoughts around that. And I think for Sydney is the challenge of availability of data and the challenges that countries are grappling with, and how that we can be able, or the countries can be able to go around that to be able to provide data on 1.4.2 and 5A1. So I start with you, Shahad, if you could go first.
Evelyn, just for a logistic reason, I think we are going to have also some questions from the floor. But as you said, we can go through the online one, and then just to let you know, also for moderating, we will have also some questions from the venue here, from the in-person participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Shahad, you can go on.
Yeah, thank you, Evelyn. Well, regarding this question, the idea of Brindex is not measuring the perception of data once, but every 2 years. So this would give us the understanding how the people perception changed over the years with the change of policy, with the change in their documentation situation, giving us a better understanding of how people perceive their security, because in one of the slides I have shown there were people with no documentation and they were feeling overall secure to some extent about their tenure. So the idea is to have a repetitive surveys that measure these perceptions every 2 years, to identify the changes, to identify how the people perception is changing, and to identify the impact of the policies related to land issues. I hope I was able to answer your question, Marco.
Thank you, Shahad. I think we'll leave that at that point. Ward, briefly, and then Sydney briefly, before we hand it over to our colleague to get us questions from the other side of the conference.
Yes, thank you. I had a question about some of the indicators of Landex that are crowdsourced and how we verify the validity and the reliability of that information. And so that's a question not only for the crowdsourced data, but for all the data, of course. When you develop an ecosystem with different initiatives, different methodologies, different sources, etc., quality becomes a core issue. So regarding the crowdsourced one, which is 10C, which is the harassment from murder up to a broad panel of different types of harassments of land rights defenders. It's only one indicator. The basis is fully crowdsourced, so it's internet-based, and there's a search, automatized search about these harassments. And when this information comes in, it is treated by the Defender Coalition, which is a broad coalition of actors and members in numerous countries. So when this information comes in, it is then verified by one or several of the members of this team. So it is not fully crowdsourced like your Google Apps, etc. But the basis of the information that comes in is crowdsourced, and then there's a verification process going on by this coalition, which is broad-based. For the other data reliability processes, every piece of information coming into Landex needs to be referenced. So when the piece of information comes, there is, for every piece of information coming in, a verification of the validity of the reference, and then also the quality of the implementation of the methodology and the alignments to the indicator of Landex. We normally...
Thank you, Ward. I would want to cut you short just to give it to Sydney, and then we allow some more time to... I think you've responded significantly to the question, so kindly if we could allow me to pass it briefly to Sydney, and then we take it to the rest of the colleagues in the conference room. Over to you, Sydney.
Thanks, Evelyn. Yeah, I'll be brief. I see there are more questions too coming in the chat. So one of the questions to me was basically on the data availability, particularly around gender disaggregated data or land use disaggregated data. Because as many of you are probably aware, land data in general is not as widely available as we would like. And even when it is available, sometimes you can't split by individual or even identifying agricultural land, for example. And this is essentially precisely why we're having this push towards creating this tool to increase data collection and really trying to advocate for the value of this individual and use disaggregated land, because it is necessary. I mean, not only for SDG monitoring, but also for policy, for informing policymakers. There was a question about the number of SDGs that have, or number of countries, sorry, that have reported on these SDGs given the data constraints. And so far, there are 10 countries that have reported on 5A1, and which are primarily in Africa, if I recall. And there are between 22 and 35 countries that have reported for SDG 142. And the reason for the range is that 142, the documentation is reported as a separate sub-indicator from the perceptions. And so in some countries, the documentation is more widely available than the perception question, for example. So countries can report individually on those sub-indicators. I'll leave it at that and we can go for more questions. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Sydney. I pass it to colleagues in the conference room, please, for your support to access questions from there. Over.
Good morning. Greetings from Cairo for all the presenters. Thank you very much for the organizers too for bringing together all these schemes of data collection and information systems. I'm Rabia Wahba, representing EMENA Regional Coordinator in ILC Land Coalition, International Land Coalition. And I'd like to shed a light on the intricate situation of the Arab region. How can we make use of the comparative advantage among the different regions to utilize the people in the Arab regions through technical, high-level technical and accurate data system such as the Landex and the other ones presented by the presenters, because you know well that the Arab region is rich of everything, resources and also problems, from conflicts to wars and resources also. So I would like to ask my colleagues to give specific recommendation for how to make use of these systems on the ground, also for the governments to maybe understand that sometimes the repression is more cost than giving the accurate information and transparency, because in many countries in the region, the data are not allowed, or there is a clear manipulation about the data. So this is clearly reflected on a lot of losses, particularly on the land. So we find the governments are biased to investment projects, although it is more costly than making people participating in local governance. So I'd like to listen from our colleagues about how to recommend specific techniques for this problem. Thank you.
Thank you. We can hear from any other question coming from your side, kindly.
شكرا جزيلا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. صلاح أبو كشوة، مركز استدامة لحوكمة الأرض السودان. في عدد من الدول العربية، ونحن الآن في المؤتمر العربي الثاني الأراضي، أهداف التنمية المستدامة غير مستصحبة في مسألة التخطيط الاستراتيجي للتنمية في مؤسساتنا. سؤالي للأخت شهد وبريندكس، إلى أي مدى في تجربتكم في العالم العربي استطاعت التدخل من خلال دراسات ومسوحات بريندكس لأمان الحيازة أن يغير من طريقة صنع السياسات على المستوى الرسمي؟ ما هي انعكاسات هذا العمل الذي قمتم به في الدول العربية؟ وهل غير من طريقة صنع السياسات؟ هل أضاف لمتخذي القرار؟ لأنه في دولنا العربية اتخاذ القرار يتم على المستوى الرسمي كثيرا. فماذا حدث بعد أن قمتم بهذه الدراسات، وإلى أي مدى نجحتم في أن تغيروا من وضع السياسات؟ أيضا هناك ملاحظة أن كثير من هذه الدراسات من الصعوبة إدخالها في دولنا العربية واستصحابها في التخطيط بسبب عدم دراية المستوى الأعلى من صانعي القرار بأهميتها أو بطريقتها أو بآمانها أو بخصوصيتها للدولة. فهل لديكم مكاتب محلية في الدول العربية تستطيع أن تصل إلى متخذي القرارات وتخبرهم، أم لديكم تواصل، أم كيف تصلون إلى هذه المجموعات المهمة جدا والتي ستسمح أو تمنع قيام هذه الدراسات والاستفادة منها في صنع القرار؟ شكرا جزيلا.
Evelyn, if I might answer in Arabic. شكرا صلاح على السؤال، سؤال كثير مهم. بالحقيقة بريندكس أعلنت عن البيانات والداتا اللي جمعناها بالوطن العربي ب 2020 بشهر السابع، يعني من شهر السابع 2020 لحد الآن. المدة مو كفاية لحتى نقدر نساهم بتغيير مجموعة قرارات أو مجموعة سياسات، بس خلتنا قادرين إنه نبني شبكة من المؤثرين على القرار السياسي. مثل بالأردن قدرنا نبني تواصل ويا رشيد ترانسبرنسي حتى نقدر نبلش نعمل دراسة بالعمق حول مفهوم أمان الحيازة، وبالأخص للمرأة ضمن السياق الأردني. عندنا أيضا مشروع وهي دراسة تعمقية بحثية في مصر اللي تهدف أيضا بالأخير إلى كتابة مجموعة من الاقتراحات لتغيير السياسات بالسياق المصري. الهدف من بريندكس إنه نوصل معلومات لأكبر عدد ممكن من الناس، أيضاً بناء شراكات مع المجتمع المدني والحكومات لتقديم السياسات المناسبة والنصائح المناسبة التي تهدف لتحسين أمن الحيازة للمرأة أو للشباب أو للاجئين. فإحنا بصدد إنه نطور توجهاتنا بالمنطقة العربية، كما إنه إحنا بصدد إنه نبني شراكات ويا أي عضو فعال في المنطقة العربية، سواء من الجانب الحكومي أو من الجانب المدني. شكراً صلاح. Back to you, Evelyn. Thank you.
شكرا على إدارة الجلسة. أنا عبد الحفيظ من مصلحة التخطيط العمراني في ليبيا، وشكرا على المتحدثين. ولدي سؤال يتعلق بالجلوبال لاند اندكس، المؤشرات التي وضعت وربطها بالاس دي جيز أو بعض الاس دي جيز. هل هناك فكرة أيضا لربطها خصوصا أن الجلوبال لاند اندكس as a tool to achieve ecosystem، هل هناك محاولة لربطها بالاندكس المتعلق بالريزيلينس، خصوصا أن ظهور مجموعة من الاندكسز، مثلا الاندكس المطور من قبل ريبا وغيرها، التي تعمل على تحقيق الريزيلينس على مستوى المدن وعلى مستوى الدول. شكرا.
Can I respond straight away? Can I respond? Yes. Well, I don't hear anybody else, so let me respond straight away. So yes, indeed, Landex Landex will first of all develop this global database, and we've done it now for about 30 countries. We are busy, the full database for 30 countries, the partial database for most of the countries in the world, but of course the objective is to have the full database soon. Once this is done, we will develop more products and more alignment analysis with other initiatives. The first product we want to put out, and that's to respond to previous questions from Rabia and the other participant, is to provide SDG reports, shadow reports that will be presented in country to governments, but also to the high-level panel, high-level political forum in New York, the HLPF, in order to have this cross-level from global to national coverage of the results of monitoring and of the debate on SDGs. We think that if there's an awareness at global level of the situation at national level and vice versa, we can more easily push this agenda at the various levels, including national level. So it's important for us to play on the different levels, and for ILC to present the results of Landex and these reports at these various levels. Once this is done, of course, from there on, we will, what Prindex is doing excellently at this stage, use the Landex index to link it to all the other indexes out there. It can be resilience index, but we have human development indexes, etc. as well. For us, it is important to reposition land and land governance in the framework of all the other aspects, whether it's the global crisis, climate change, etc., but also the urban resilience indexes, etc., etc. It is important. It cannot be land for land only, which is already very important because we hear how little it is being done on land and land reporting. Sydney said none of the countries in the Arab states reported on SDG 5A1. But it's also important to reposition land monitoring in the framework of all the other aspects, global crisis like migration, climate change, resilient indices, etc.
Thank you. Do we go to Sydney? Did you have any reflection, or did you have more questions? Because of the interest of time, maybe Sydney, please proceed.
Yeah, no, I think just to echo what Ward is saying, I think it is important to view this as a bigger picture. It's not just land for land only, but I mean, to see it as this integrated piece of welfare and different aspects of welfare. Yeah, and I think just to touch on one other thing, and I'll stop there, but I think kind of getting at the matching with other indices, I think this is one of kind of the value added of integrating this questionnaire module on 142 and 5A1 into larger survey frameworks, because then you are able to see I mean the human development indices, consumption indexes, food security measures alongside land rights, and look at those different relationships, which I think will really help motivate the policy around land rights. I'll leave it at that for now. I know we're over. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sydney. Sam, if you have a few observations, I know Shahad was able to respond, but maybe just to hear from Sam on your observation. I know you've responded to some of the questions that came in through the chat. Sam?
Yeah, thank you, Evan. Yeah, I have responded to some of the questions. One was about some questions. So one was about how we do collect the data. So as I said, you have the structures at local level up to the central level. It is very easy. We have the forms, standard forms that were used in the whole country. So if you submit your document, if you miss one document, automatically it rejects. The officer at the point of submission, they reject the document. Once it is entered in the system, the transaction is made. You can learn immediate. If you want to know the number of transactions that was made within 1 hour, 2 hours, 1 day, you can able to know the data in terms of if you want to know the inheritance, transfer by voluntary sales, you want to know the succession, you want to know we have 47 transactions that we process. If you have an issue with your neighbor or what issues, you put a caveat in the system or a dispute so that if you want to process a transaction, you cannot process it. So we process different transactions, including the inheritance and even different types. In terms of collecting data, in terms of accuracy, it is very accurate because when you register, it has to record if you are female or male, you're married or not married. You provide the supporting documents of civil status. If you are single, you have to get your a certificate before registering your Untitled. So it is just a matter of commitment and being honest in all processes. Plus in Rwanda, the system after registering the land, now the trend is big for buyers and sellers. So in terms of the prices on properties has increased because of the different people from out of the countries started from foreign countries started buying land because the services you just deliver 1 day service. So 7 days if you want to do any service, our staff are there, or you apply using online services. So in terms of getting service,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, panelists, I want to appreciate you, and I want to appreciate all the participants. Just to summarize briefly the reflection about this session, it's important to be able to develop and strengthen the national institutional capacity of organizations that are responsible and mandated to collect data and statistics. These are national institutions that are led by government, be it the National Statistical Organization, the registries, the cadastre system, but also for civil society, the research institution, and also looking at the private sector and who else want to contribute to data. I think their capacity to be able to do this is paramount so that they are able to deliver quality, reliable, authentic, and disaggregated data, not only by tenure and sex, but also by other levels that are required to be able to give us the right information, including population of interest, be it indigenous communities, communal, those living in communal tenure, and so forth. So we have opportunities definitely to be able to, the government has the role to be able to take its middle and center stage to be able to lead this process. But of course, some of these approaches and tools that have been shared also provide very complementary data and information that is able to spur dialogue and conversation. Access to resources is also core to making these institutions able to deliver. The human resource and the technical capacity is equally important, as the leadership of the custodian agencies has presented the opportunity to work in a number of countries. And under the Arab Land Initiative, of course, for which we are convening in the second conference, we know that we have been able to reach out to you, colleagues from the Arab region, and you'll be able to use this as a channel to reach out and request for opportunities for capacity support, for which the custodian agencies would provide, the GLTN and UN Habitat will be able to provide, and in collaboration with our colleagues from ILC, FAO, the Prindex, the Global Land Alliance, will be able to work with you and the World Bank to be able to bridge the gaps and do the match that we can be able to do together. So until this point, I want to thank you and congratulate all of you for making the time, and I hope you found the sessions and the access to the information that has been shared useful and will be progressively able to support your work. So thank you very much to the panelists, and thank you to everyone who participated, and to the conference organizers for giving us the opportunity to have this masterclass. Thank you and have a good time.
Thank you very much, Everly.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.